And I'd heard of this sort of thing going on in the war in Algeria. It went on all the time, but I'd never seen it. Where this simple punishment, as it appeared to me, of a village.
Only 3 or 4 houses had been burned down, said the military. In fact, reporters counted up to 400 houses destroyed. The presence of bunkers, said the military, proved the village was a Viet Cong stronghold. But reporters knew there wasn't a hamlet in Vietnam that didn't have a bunker to protect it, often from American bombing. But even without censorship, it took almost 2 years for the full story of the massacre at My Lai to get out, long after one man, Lieutenant Calley, had been charged with the murder of 102 civilians in March 1968. The reason was not lack of evidence, but a resistance to the story on the part of the media itself. The word atrocity implies something out of the ordinary, but the massacre at My Lai was nothing unusual. The smashing of this home and the dislocation of these lives was also nothing unusual, an everyday atrocity. But unfortunately, refugees, victims, are seldom newsworthy.
It's part of a long historical process in which the civilians have become more and more the target for military hardware. I mean, let's go back to look at the parallels between the Boer War and Vietnam, for example. Just as the Americans tried to do in Vietnam, the British government tried to remove from the Boers, the Boer guerrilla forces, their major source of sustenance, the Boer civilians, by putting all the women and children into concentration camps. So that anybody who was out there in the wilderness still must be a Boer supporter and therefore became a legitimate military target. Much the same thinking of the Americans in Vietnam. Already in the Boer War you begin to get the idea that civilians are legitimate military targets. Second World War, that's continued as a deliberate act of policy. I mean, the British government's or the Allied government's policy in the Second World War was to bomb, area bombing of civilian housing. Now, we denied it at the time. We said we were bombing purely military targets. We were bombing areas of Germany, large civilian populations in German towns, the aim being to break German morale. Then you reach what was probably the ultimate in attacks on civilians. We bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They weren't chosen as targets in which there were large military installations. The principal reason was to break Japanese morale by showing what a large number of your people we can wipe out. So by the time you get to Vietnam, the idea of civilians being killed in war has become acceptable. Large numbers of civilians suffer in war. So it's a natural progression to now we're in the ultimate where the sole target in a nuclear war will be the civilian